Well, I'm joined now by Natalie Richards, who, after being bullied at school, set up her social enterprise, EduKit, which aims to help schools support students with their mental health. Lovely to talk to you today, Natalie. Just listening there to Nick's report and from your experience, how endemic is this problem now amongst young people?
Very much so. So what the schools that we work with have seen is that been a steep rise in terms of mental health issues over the last year or so, and that has deepened as we've moved into successive lockdowns. So there were concerns in the first lockdown, but by the time we got to the more recent lockdown, those concerns were really, really acute, and they're particularly around issues like depression, students being really withdrawn, and lots of anxiety as well, both in terms of the coronavirus as well as what's going to happen next in terms of their exams and other stresses and strains they have. So we're seeing a marked increase in terms of mental health issues.
And in terms of things like eating disorders and self-harm that Nick's been focusing on, it is the stereotype that it is girls that this affects. Is it more girls than boys that are affected by this?
Absolutely. It is more girls than boys, but it's definitely not exclusively girls. There are schools that are reporting that boys are also experiencing self-harm and eating disorders as well, because of course they're susceptible to the same issues as their female counterparts. So it really is very wide-reaching, and what they're seeing as well is that the gulf between those students who are most vulnerable and their peers is widening, and that's very, very concerning indeed for them.
What, the academic gulf or the social gulf?
I would say both. There are students who have fallen very behind in terms of their studies, but particularly the mental health gulf. So those students who went into the pandemic with vulnerabilities, those who were already at risk, have really seen that those issues have deepened, and therefore there is just so much need for early intervention to spot those signs early, to understand the red flags, so that we can get them the right support before issues escalate, before there are these referrals to A&E.
What are the red flags that the parents and teachers should be looking out for?
Yeah, so really, if students or children and young people are particularly withdrawn, if they aren't communicating, there are a number who just haven't had the social interactions they would have done over the last year or so, so they're just not behaving as they normally would do. There are a number who have behavioural challenges. There are lots of behaviour incidents bubbling up in school, and that acting out is really a way of students dealing with those types of anxieties. But of course there are some students who are non-vocal. And they are perhaps the hardest to support because you can't tell what's going on for them. And that's why the work that we do at EduKit with schools to equip them to have the tools so they can spot students through the surveys that we have. Students report daily how they're feeling and why, so that schools can intervene early. That type of support is so desperately needed right now because early intervention, as I said, is key.
Yeah. And in terms of what is at the root of this, obviously with mental health issues, it's a very personal thing, and different things will trigger things for different people. But fundamentally, what do you think is at the root for many of the youngsters who are not eating properly or who are self-harming?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's incredibly complex, and there's so many different things that affect young people. But what we become very, very aware of is the need for the students to be able to self-soothe, to understand their emotions, to understand why they feel the way that they do, so they can get the support they need it when they need it. And often that has not been happening in lockdown. They've not been able to access the networks that they normally would do. They've not been able to play with their friends and to release their anxieties and their concerns in the way that they would do normally. So that has led to an escalation, and in some cases, as I said, it's been such an extreme change in terms of what schools are seeing, and some are desperately concerned for certain vulnerable students because they just haven't been able to release those emotions, to access that support that they needed early enough. So they really want to intervene now before anything escalates further.
And in terms of building resilience for children and helping them cope better with the pressures of life, what should we all be doing?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of important things. First of all, I think it's really important to help students and young people generally to think about the longer game. Yes, we know that there has been a lot of challenge over the last 12 months or so, but what is it that they're focused on for their futures? Let's try to get optimistic about what the future could hold. And I think because there's so much uncertainty about what is happening, that has got lost a little bit. So let's get them excited about, you know, whether they might go to university in future, or a great career choice, or starting their own business, or some other activity they can get involved in. And then also, as you quite rightly said, focusing on those life skills that they need in order to build resilience and grit, and to know that whatever life throws in their way, they are going to get through it. And I think that the schools that we are working with are doing an exceptional job of providing their students with those types of foundations, those types of lifelong skills that won't only equip them in terms of getting through what we're seeing at the moment, but will also help to carry through their whole lives. So we would definitely welcome those two things: a focus on where they're headed, and the skills, the social skills and the life skills to be able to get there.
Natalie Richards, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you.